During Edward's reign, Queenborough and its castle enjoyed a brief period of wealth. But after that, it became more famous for a succession of disreputable mayors and eccentric happenings. Queenborough is the kind of place that's just awash with bizarre stories. And my favourite is about a chap called John Taylor, who was a Thames ferryman and called himself the water poet. And in the year 1614, he made this extraordinary journey from London all the way to Queenborough in a boat made of paper. And to help us recreate that magical moment, I've got a pair of nutters here. This is Abs and this is Tim. Tim, why did he do this bizarre journey?
He was always doing bizarre journeys like this, Taylor. He walked barefoot to Edinburgh to borrow a pound from Ben Jonson, the playwright, for a pint of beer. I think the paper boat was probably his most successful mission.
So how are we going to make this boat made out of paper?
We've taken some hemp paper, which is what Taylor used, and got a bit of an example here of this sample I've done with a bit of brown paper. We're going to stick it together, lacquer the surface of it.
What do we lacquer it with?
We've used a traditional kind of lacquer that he would have had at the time.
Yeah.
So here's a tiny model we made earlier.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I'm not.
We're really going to make that?
We really are going to make that.
How?
And you can give us a hand, if you'd be so kind.
Yeah.
If you care to just hold that corner there. Okay. And we're going to fold that end over, get it up level with the other side. Oh boy. And if we can just lift that up for a moment, you begin to get yourself a boat shape.
It is boat shaped.
It is a...
I have to say, it's pretty floppy.
We're hopefully going to have some rolled-up tubes, like sort of extended toilet rolls, to sort of hopefully...
You may think that is ridiculous, though. Wait until you see the oars, for the oars are made...
That's right. What we're trying to do is Taylor used oars made out of...
So here we have a piece of dried cod.
Taylor's oars were big, dried stockfish, but we've gone as close as we possibly can to them. And they're what are hopefully going to propel us through the water.
God, enough stink.
It does, doesn't it?
Hasn't British television gone downhill?
Right.
Back to relative sanity, and Kerry's trying to fit together again the curved stones that we found in the moat. And they seem pretty convincing as part of the medieval well, which would have stood in the centre of the castle. Most of the masonry was sold off after the castle was demolished in 1650, which could explain why there's no sign of the outer wall of the rotunda in Trench 1. But we're having more success with the inner wall.
Phil, what have you got there, mate?
Got the turn of the wall, mech.
Oh, wow. Let's have a look.
Look, that's what we had before.
Yeah.
With that edge coming that way. And now, look, we got another one coming this way now.
I'm just wondering where that fits into the plan.
Well, see, what I want to do is I want to strip all that lot out.
Yeah.
To find out whether that wall actually continues on through.
Or whether it turns.
Or whether it stops and literally just turns.
If the wall does turn, it could be the entrance to the rotunda. This was linked to the postern gate by the corridor which Matt's been looking for in Trench 3.
Well, it looks like we've got the beginning of a wall here. It's not as substantial as the ones we've had elsewhere on site, but look, we've got all the stones here, mortar. It looks like it's been layered up with clay in between.
Right.
And on this side of it, coming straight down here, is this huge ditch.
So is that what you'd expect to see with the geophysics that you've got?
I think we could be onto it. The wall goes with the high resistance there in red.
Yeah.
And that's through on that line.
Right.
Just as we expected. The thing is, there should be a second wall, probably 5 metres that way. If we can confirm that, then we've got the line leading right into the centre of the castle.
I think it's above and beyond the call of duty for you to keep digging in this rain. What is it that's kept you going?
It's really exciting, Tony. It looks like we've got a bank up at that end of the trench, and it looks like it actually had some kind of stone lining.
Where's that?
Well, if you look underneath Peter's feet there, can
Yeah.
you see the stones? That's the top of the stones. If you follow the line along, there's some pale clay, and there's another couple of stones there on the edge of the bank. And the rest of them have slid all the way down, and they're in a pile down at the bottom there.
And how long do you think it's going to be before we get to the bottom of the ditch?
Well, I thought we were only a couple of inches off the bottom, but Mike did an auger down there, and we've got about 40 centimetres to go.
This has been a really frustrating day. When we started out, we thought we had really good archaeology with the bank and the ditch in the wood, which might spread over to here and then into that far field there. But the more we dug, the less evidence we got. That is, until late this afternoon, when suddenly we realised we didn't have nothing. Actually, we've got a big something. We've got this huge ditch, a big bank, we've got this stone lining. This is really well engineered. But what is it? What's its date? We still don't know. Still, we've got another 2 days left. Although, according to the weather forecast, the rain's going to get even worse. Beginning of day 2 here at Dinmore Hill in Herefordshire, and I was right. This site is doomed. I thought the problem would be the archaeology, but in fact it looks like the archaeology is going to be really good. The issue is the weather. It's rotten, 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 rotten. 25 millimetres of rain forecast by 4 o'clock this afternoon. In fact, it's so bad that none of us really knows what to do. We're excavating what we think is an Iron Age hill fort. At least we would be if it wasn't pelting down.
Well, that looks a bit dodgy, Matt, doesn't it?
It's not as full of water as I actually thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a swimming pool. It's the sliding which is going to be the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're also there's a danger of a mudslide too. I don't think we could possibly put people down there. So I'm afraid we'll just have to close this down for the time being and call it a day.
Right-ho.
Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, there it is. Back home.
But even if work's ground to a halt here, at least the woods provide some cover down at the other end of our site, aided by this state-of-the-art weatherproofing kit brought in at huge expense.
Where do you get this stuff from? Some local car boot sale or something? Look at this here.
I'll tell you what, the longer you stand farting around with it, the more it's going to break.
Well, let's put it over the trench then.
Well, you do your second best thing, stop talking.
Well, no, I'm directing.
Pitching a tent in the rain's bad enough, but at least it's better than having to do geophys. This is ridiculous.
I mean, well ventilated.
Well, it's well ventilated. And we got some light, that's the main thing, and we're dry. This will be a good place to work.
Are we going to be able to dig here all right today?
You're too right we are. Rather live working here than out there.
But the problem is the ground slopes that way. Isn't it all going to run into the archaeology?
Well, considerate of you to mention that, but...
we have ways of dealing with that.
Yes, at least we'll be dry.
Yeah, true. They've no idea how they're going to dig today. I've no idea at all. What have you got here?
We've got the most amazing bank. I mean, it is a superb thing. Look at it. You can see it's not just built in one phase. It's a series of events where people have actually made this thing bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger and stronger in defence. The wonderful thing about it, too, is that we've got this wall, stub end of a wall, coming out.
What does that tell you, Francis?
Well, I think that could be what they called in Victorian days a guardhouse. They're very characteristic of hill forts in this part of the world. Basically, it's a sort of semicircular building just inside the entranceway. And for all the world, that looks like, to me, a guardhouse, in which case we are in an entranceway into the hill fort.
And then the other thing that we do have here also is the ditch. We want to get a complete section through the ditch because if we can demonstrate that the construction of this ditch is the same or different to what Matt has got, it will help us to understand whether we're dealing with one site or two sites.
If there are going to be wrecks here, we've got the perfect team to help us find them. We've got Mark and Johnny here from the Royal Navy. How are you going to approach this task, Mark?
Well, first of all, we'll go for a dive out in the bay behind us, and then the two guys that live down in the boat will do the second dive.
But one of them's got a bit of a hangover, so he wants to go second rather than first.
He will go second, yes.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, equipped with our underwater camera, the Navy dive team sets off to look for medieval wrecks. Meanwhile, we've put a new trench in on the island to see if there's any evidence that this is where the monks lived. But that's not quite the whole story. For the very first time on Time Team, we've got a treasure map, and this... You're rather embarrassed by this, aren't you? This is the trench that we've put in order to find the treasure. John, explain.
Well, there was actually an American Time Team fan that called us to come and do a survey here. Somehow he got hold of this map with this cross, and this is supposed to be the site of some treasure. And actually, Jimmy got fantastic results with the radar, and this is what we found.
What do you think it might be? Is it natural?
Well, I don't think it's natural. You've got the two edges, you've got the end there. It's about as thick as that spade.
And I mean, it could be the top of a kist burial or something medieval, or even a standing stone which has fallen over or been buried. I mean, that's the other possibility.
That's what we thought.
Is that a sack of doubloons you've got down there, Karen?
Oh, don't. Stop it. Stop it.
The tides have suddenly gone out, and we're going to have to leave early. But just before we go, Ian's got the earliest piece of pottery we've had in either chapel.
It's quite crude and handmade.
So what sort of date is this then?
Probably the late 1100s into the early 1200s.
Oh, crikey, so that's considerably early, isn't it?
This is when Glastonbury was trying to get their cult of St Michael going. But admiring it nearly gets us stranded. Thankfully, it's not long before we're on our way to the mainland. But it's not so hard to imagine monks and pilgrims falling foul of the jagged rocks, where our team of divers from the Navy have been filming their search for wrecks. How'd you get on?
Lots of wildlife, some seals, fish, crabs, but unfortunately no wreckage.
You swam with the seals?
We did swim with seals, it was beautiful.
Ever done that before?
Never, first time, so it's all worthwhile.
But no wreckage?
Nothing at all.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that little passage of water actually is much less dangerous than people have said, and there haven't been the wrecks down there that we thought?
No, not at all. There's a lot of rocks down there, and it does get very shallow at low tide, so I'm sure there have been wreckage there before. But just the amount of wildlife and seaweed that's grown, we wouldn't see anything.
But at least you swam with a seal.
Yeah, that's well worthwhile, yeah.
We think that at least 17 ships of Henry V's Royal Navy were maintained and overhauled at Bursledon, a mile towards the sea from our site. Stuart would like to know more about this busy village in the time of Henry V. With so much royal business, Bursledon docks must have been a focal point for trade. If Stuart can locate the medieval shoreline, then he can begin to piece together the layout of the ancient port. The tides in the river churn up all sorts of silt and weed, and the underwater visibility is very poor, so John has designed a special enclosure. This paddling pool-looking device is called the sea curtain. Once anchored over the trench, the sides can be let down and secured to form a tank. The water inside can then be pumped out through a filter and returned into the enclosure, clear of silt. Well, that's the theory, but it's already taken half the day just to inflate it and get it in the water. It's just after lunch and the tide is slowing down. John's getting ready to dive.
Chin up just a little bit, mate. Yeah, in, fingers.
Everything else is ready. Each diver has a companion on standby in case there's a problem.
Contents gauge. Carabiner. Suit inflation. You okay? Get over in the water, please.
But there's little point in Phil and I taking the place of the two working divers until the visibility is far better and they've started to uncover the wreck.
Left surface.
John has chosen to dig across the stern of the ship in a trench about 2 by 2.5 metres. The depth of water at the moment is only 2 metres, but the tide's still running. The visibility is extremely poor, and there's a huge amount to get ready before the serious archaeology can begin. John's still positioning the anchors for the sea curtain. I was rushing around like crazy till just after lunch, and now everything's just gone, ugh. That's really frustrating.
Why?
Well, nothing's happening. Look at this thing. It took them hours to blow this up, and it's just been sitting in the water forever.
Well, look, no, I mean, I disagree with you. I mean, I know it's disappointing. I want to go and see this boat, don't get me wrong. I mean, it looks like at least I've got my feet in the water. But, I mean, look, this is a difficult exercise. A lot of it is experimental. That has never been tried before. So, I mean, we've got to get it out there, we've got to test it, and we can't run it until we've done all this.
The first people to investigate the wreck were the Victorians, who thought the Grass Dieu was a huge Viking ship because her hull was clinker-built. This was an ancient technique using horizontal overlapping boards, still used today in small boats. The wreck diggers noticed the old ship's hull was made up of not one, but 3 planks of oak fastened together with huge ship's nails. Nothing like this had ever been seen before, and not surprisingly, archaeologists since have been asking questions. To understand just how this royal ship was built and the problems the medieval shipwrights faced with a ship of this size, Damien is going to reproduce a very small section of this extraordinarily complicated hull.
How long would it take to make a plank like this, do you reckon, if you knew what you were doing and were doing it all the time? Not that I'm suggesting you don't know what you're doing, but you know what I mean.
It's a little bit cheeky, but...
I was just trying to get an idea of how fast work was likely to progress.
Well, if they knew what they were doing, small ones like this, they would make, I don't know, 10 or 20 a day if they had very good straight pieces, which this is reasonably straight and regular and nice and fresh, so they'd make a hell of a lot. If the material wasn't as good, it would take longer, you know.
John's finally got the site prepared. He's had problems sighting the anchors for the sea curtain, and he's been marking out the trench underwater. On the surface, Phil has been waiting patiently for his instructions.
Phil, can you hold it there and then I'll come and get it? You'll come and get it?
We're so nearly ready to go, but no end of optimism will make up for the fact that we've probably lost a whole day just getting the site ready. What is it that you find so exciting about mills?
I think they're really interesting structures and we don't know much about them. After all, there must have been many thousands of them in medieval England. And almost every community would have had one because it made grinding the corn, preparing the bread and everything that much easier. And yet we've done very, very little work on them.
Why not, if they're that exciting?
I think it's because of the way archaeologists work. You know, they're either working with sites that are going to be redeveloped, and they don't often seem to involve mills, or they're too small, really, to be part of big research projects that might get the money which archaeologists then spend 3 or 4 years digging. So they fall between all those stools. And that's why this is so important. It's not very often you can be fairly confident you've got a site and you've got the chance to actually do anything with it. I mean, I think the way to think of it is you are grinding corn by hand with stones. This is pretty well the first process where you harness a different sort of energy, i.e. water power, to alleviate all that work. So it's an industrial revolution in one sense.
This was the last mill building in Dotton. It was knocked down in the 1960s. We're looking for a date for when this building was put up and any sign of anything that may have come before it. There was a mill listed as being in Dotton in Domesday in 1086. But the big question is, has the mill always been in the same place? There are 3 main areas that hopefully will provide some answers in the form of dates. The water wheel would have sat in a deep pit. We'll look at how that was built. Inside was a gear pit to hold the gearing. We'll also try to find that. And there would have been a domestic area, the part the miller would have lived in. Hopefully we'll come across bits of pottery and household stuff that'll also help us with the dating. The mill sits here, on a road crossing the River Otter in South Devon.
Right, photo, bank. Bank's over there, bank's there.
But first, Phil has got to work out where to dig.
Shall we help you a bit?
No, well, no. Look, presumably we're on the wheel pit, don't we?
Yeah, wheel pit there, but this photograph was taken from that field over there, looking this
That way.
Yeah.
Ah!
That, you got it? So this building has actually been mapped for 100 and odd years. Its physical presence is well documented. And where we're standing at the moment is just here. This is the mill. The mill was in this area here, coming down here, and at the bottom of it is the wheel somewhere in this position at the end of this leak that comes down here.
That's what we want, isn't it, Martin?
Yeah, the wheel pit. I think the wheel pit would be the best feature to go for straight away, because it'll be a big feature under the ground and will delineate the sort of at the end of the building.
Well, I mean, it's on the
That's
map.
where we should start doing the radar.
Start the radar here, yeah.
Look,
and
we
spread out from
don't
here.
need it.
No, you do. You may have good map evidence. We all know what Stuart's maps are like. But no, more importantly, Phil, it's the first time we've done a mill. We've not done geophysics or radar over a mill. It's important that we collect that data as a future reference.
John, we're not here for your groundbreaking geophysics. We're here to do a site.
It's the way it should be done professionally.
Look, we know where it is.
It will take us 5 minutes to do it.
I've heard that before.
Over here, Stuart.
Yeah, start here, Jimmy.
True to his word, within minutes, John's got something for Phil to look at.
That's where we reckon the wheel pit is. Then you see all these reflections going down. Those are actually within the mill building. And this is still inside the building, but suggesting we've got internal divisions. So you can start. I mean, that's been worth doing it.
Yeah, well, that's it. And it didn't take any more than 5 minutes.
Happy now, Phil makes a start.
One more scrape and you think you might see a wall. And nothing happens.
Yeah,
and you think, oh well,
going.
one more scrape and there might be a wall.
Dirty, though, isn't it?
It is getting dirtier.
Well, one more scrape later.
Ah, no, what's that?
Oh, it's bricks. That's in situ, isn't it, Phil?
That is in situ.
That's in
Oh,
situ.
that's good. Look at that.
Yeah.
Nice load of bricks, yeah. Going straight down there, look.
Right.
So that's one side there.
This is Dotton. Here's the River Otter. This is the road that crosses the river. And the mill where Phil is here. Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses and behind-the-scenes insights.